India Global. I'm Gaurie Dwivedi. As always, let's start the show with the top stories coming in. First up, big win for India's fight against terrorism. 26/11 Mastermind Tahawwur Rana extradited from US and will shortly arrive in India. The terror accused is set to land in New Delhi anytime now. Donald Trump's latest crackdown on pro-Palestinian protesters. DHS all set to screen aliens, quote-unquote, social media for any anti-Semitism messages. India hits back at Mohammad Yunus's northeastern remark. New Delhi now terminates transshipment facility for Dhaka. It will have a major impact on Bangladesh exports in the entire region. And this week on Spot On, we have a Grammy winner Chandrika Tandon exclusively talking about the life that she now leads, balancing meditation and music. Full podcast out this Saturday on 12th of April, 9 a.m. Big story that we are tracking right now. Tahawwur Rana, the mastermind of the horrendous 26/11 terror attack that took 166 lives, is set to now be in India anytime. In fact, he is set to land very shortly to India, where of course he will then be whisked by the National Intelligence Agency or the NIA. Let's first quickly now get to the big questions that I will now be posing on to our guests this evening as to what does this mean, why this could mean a possible closure as far as victims are concerned, and is this one step closer to closure for the victims? Is this a clear message to the anti-India elements that are also in the US? Remember, this is not just about India, this is about a global message. Next up, the next key question is, will this also, what next as far as Tahawwur Rana is concerned? What does this mean? Remember, there's an entire process that needs to be followed. What that will be, I will quickly now put that to the guests joining me. But most importantly, will this also boost the India-US intel sharing? Remember, there's also David Headley, who's not here. He's in the US. Remember, this didn't happen in one day. There was a meticulous planning that went behind it. Can India-US now have better intel partnership and collaborations to take this forward? We'll get that as well. Let's first get in Saurabh, who's joining me live from outside Kama Hospital to talk more about the horrendous terror attack, but more importantly, the fact, as I said, the questions that I'm posing. Saurabh, one step closer for the victims of 26/11 to get the closure that they need 16 years later.
Absolutely, and for Mumbaikars, for those who lost their loved ones, for those who witnessed the terror attacks up close and personal, it is a moment of somber reconciliation with the fact that at least some of these perpetrators who till now have not faced justice in Indian courts are being brought to justice in an Indian court under Indian law in India. Where I am is a very significant place when it comes to the 26/11 terror attacks. This is the lane the terrorists used after causing mayhem at the Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj terminus, earlier known as the VT terminus. And then, of course, right here in this vicinity is where they shot down 3 officers of the Mumbai police, Ashok Kamte, Hemant Karkare, and of course Vijay Salaskar. Hemant Karkare at that time was the chief of the anti-terror squad, and all of them gave their lives, laid down their lives fighting for Mumbai, fighting to save Mumbai right here in this lane. And also you have Sadanand Date, who's the current DG of the NIA, who heads the NIA, who played a critical role. The Kama hospital is right behind me. There's an entry from here, and he took on the terrorists there. He suffered injuries. He won a presidential medal for his services, bravery that night. So there are countless stories of bravery, of sacrifice, of valor, that even these terrorists who attacked Mumbai had to face the valor, the courage, the bravery of these officers who would defend their city with every bit of strength they had in their body, and that's what happened. But obviously, perpetrators like Zakir Rahman, Lakhvi, Hafiz Saeed have all had safe havens in Pakistan. In fact, David Coleman Headley, in a deposition in an Indian court, which I covered a few years ago, laid bare the role of Tahawwur Rana. And of course, Tahawwur Rana, and of course, his whole support to David Coleman Headley while he was conducting the reconnaissance, figuring out targets, and doing all of the stuff that went into the 26/11 attacks eventually when it happened in Mumbai. So this is an extremely, extremely important point. 3 officers of the Mumbai police were gunned down here, and this remains one of the most crucial points in that attack. This happened early during the attacks. Remember, the attacks were a siege over 3 days. This happened on the night of the 26th when Kasab and his associate hijacked the police car here, then drove down the lane and were eventually again caught by a Mumbai police constable, Tukaram Ombole, who showed great courage in taking him down. So obviously, for all these stories of valor, sacrifice, and for Sadanand Date himself, who was fighting these terrorists in this very lane, this will be a moment of reckoning to see at least one of these perpetrators facing justice in India.
Indeed, Saurabh, that's really what the goal is all along, isn't it? I want to now get in Mohammed Ghazali, who's joining us live outside the NIA headquarters, where Tahawwur Rana will be taken to after he lands in New Delhi. It is expected, Ghazali, that it could be in the next 30 to 40 minutes that Tahawwur Rana could land in India, in Delhi.
Yeah, what we're being told that he may land at around 7 p.m. Is what the authorities are telling us, and after once he lands at the Palam airport, he will be brought here at the NIA office. Sorry, and he will undergo the medical test and all, and perhaps to save time, the authorities may produce him in front of the magistrate through video conferencing. But this is all tentative plan. We are still not sure about the time of the landing. But the bigger challenge, Gaurie, will be to get the truth out of Tahawwur Rana, because Tahawwur Rana is not somebody who is a first-time offender or has been involved in an attack like the Mumbai terror attack. He's supposed to be the mastermind of the terror attack. He is the one who visited Mumbai before the attacks, and not just Mumbai but different locations in the country. The NIA dossier on David Coleman Headley, another co-conspirator of the Mumbai attack, who also happens to be the childhood friend, his school-time friend with Tahawwur Rana. They both visited different cities here in India, and perhaps they were planning to execute more terror attacks. So who were their local handlers? Who gave them all the logistical support? Who are the people he met during his stay in Mumbai? He went to Cochin, he went to Ahmedabad, he went to other locations in UP as well. So that will be something which NIA will try to sort of extract from him during the interrogation. But Tahawwur Rana, as I was saying, is a hardened criminal, is what the US media have been reporting about, that he is also suffering from multiple diseases. So the challenge for NIA would be to get those details out of him, because he's not going to face the interrogation here for the first time, but he has also been investigated and interrogated by the US agencies for different crimes altogether. So he's somebody who has gone through this process, and agencies also feel that he may try to mislead the agencies once they interrogate him. So we'll have to see that once he lands, who is going to fight for, who is going to represent him in the legally, who will be his lawyer, and what kind of legal support he gets, and also what the agencies will get out of him, because the involvement of Pakistan has been established through multiple evidences. India has been talking about that how ISI, Pak Army and the entire establishment knew about the attack. So this is something which will only solidify India's allegation against Pakistan, that how Pakistan not engages or sort of pushes non-state actors to sort of vitiate the atmosphere in India and push terror on Indian
absolutely.
soil.
Saurabh Ghazali, thank you so much for joining me today. Rolling coverage of this continues. Appreciate both of you joining me today on India Global. I'm going to slip into a break, come back and talk more on this, because as I said, those questions need to be answered. And that's exactly we'll do. We'll take this story forward after this break. Stay with us. Rana's run has indeed ended, and with that, the wait for the 26/11 survivors and also the victims as well. But what happens now, more importantly, is this now a template for New India when it will now ensure that justice as far as terrorism activities, terrorist attacks are concerned, will be met no matter how long it takes. AP Singh, former director of the CBI, will be with me, but let me first get across to Ankur Chawla, who's a survivor of that horrendous attack, and we'll also get Glenn Carr, former Deputy National Intelligence Officer for Transnational Threats of the CIA. Ankur, let me start by asking you, it's a somber moment, but also a very difficult moment, I understand, for you. You're reliving the trauma, but at the same time, are you having a certain sense of closure that I spoke about earlier, which is that the mastermind of the 26/11 terror plot is now going to face justice in India?
Well, thank you for having me. Now, of course, like you rightly mentioned, and I was, listening about this entire report, obviously closely following it. It's surely a step, closer to, let's say, the entire closure. We are surely, I've been in touch with a lot of my friends from the past. These kind of incidences is when you sort of go back and, your memory sort of runs back to the incidences which happen and takes you to the flashbacks of, the incidents. But yeah, I mean, it definitely gives you a sort of satisfaction that yes, it might be delayed a lot, but it's not forgotten. It's also a great statement, I think, coming, to the universe or to the world, saying that, we haven't really forgotten it and we would not let it go very easily. So that way, it is a somber moment for sure. It is surely, a step closer. But, somewhere or the other, to be very honest, it also feels that 16 and a half years later, we are saying we are one step closer, which sort of, doesn't give you as much, if I may, happiness that it could have been, done earlier. But I think great work for that matter that, things are still progressing and we have not really forgotten it.
Glenn, comment on the fact that this did happen, the extradition. Of course, the legal proceedings have been going on for a while. Rana was exercising all the legal options available to him. But this year, when Prime Minister Modi and President Trump met, it sort of sealed Rana's fate, didn't it? And what's the message here? How should we be now viewing this important development from a larger point of India's fight against terror?
Well, it's a symbolic act and one that that certainly will bring some satisfaction or at least relief, maybe, to India and to Indians. But I think it really is a symbolic one. I'm not certain that Trump had anything special to do with this. The Supreme Court of the United States decided in 2023 to allow or approve from a legal perspective, the extradition. And I think that all was in process long before Trump had anything to do with it. However, terrorism is an easy win for India and the United States in cooperation. Our objectives are just about identical. And whether a terrorist is in an American prison or an Indian one, from a counterterrorism official's perspective, doesn't really matter too much. So the symbolism, I think, is significant. I don't mean to dismiss that, but a fundamental shift coming because of the Trump administration, I would say not. It's an easy symbolic way to demonstrate a desire to work closely together.
And Glenn, where do you think that is now going to take the two countries forward? Because, at the end of the day, to fight and to beat terrorism, you need to have robust intel sharing platforms and mechanisms.
Yeah, two things on that. The intelligence cooperation has been for many years, back when I was working even between India and the United States on terrorist issues, pretty good. That will go on behind the scenes, independent in most instances, independent of political considerations. However, under the Trump administration, Trump is clearly, although in a formal sense he will deny it, the administration will deny it, is more hostile to Islam than Biden was. Biden was not hostile to Islam. And so it's an easy thing for Trump to do to give the appearance of, or perhaps some reality to closer Indian U.S. cooperation. Extraditing a terrorist who everyone wants to see behind bars is not really, except from a legal perspective, perhaps, a difficult way to show cooperation. The intelligence cooperation has been going on. I don't anticipate there will be
there were
dramatically more,
reports that
except
some of
perhaps
this
on
planning actually started from 2001, and these mechanisms of intel sharing have been around for more than 2 decades. But Ankur, let me ask you this, that as things stand right now, I come back to the point that you'd earlier made, which is that this is an important step, this is an important development, but still it's a step. Or do you think we are close to ensuring that full justice is finally given to 2611 victims and survivors like yourself?
Well, it's definitely a significant step for sure, that it's moving towards the right direction. But saying that full justice has already been done is something which I'm not sort of very much convinced with as of now. I feel there is enough and more that has to come out as well. There are more people, and there is more information to be taken off. So to answer your question, I think it is still a step towards the right direction and a significant one. But full disclosure, I'm not too sure right now.
Okay, that's on that note, I'm going to end this. Thank you so much, Glenn and Arun, for really sharing your thoughts there. Bottom line, viewers, is that at the end of the day, 2611 happened, the dastardly attack happened in 2008. 16 years later, 2 governments later, finally Tahawwur Rana is going to be in India soon. Remember, the charge sheet happened in 2011. It's been 14 years since then. Many legal steps India had to cross for this moment to finally come. But it sends a message. It sends a message to all anti-India elements in the US, elsewhere, that when it comes to ensuring justice for terrorism-related activities, India will not stop. And secondly, it also sets a template that going forward, it will crack down on terrorism that much more strongly. And I feel that going forward, the intel framework between India and the US will be far more robust, far more efficient, and able to handle any such possible attacks going forward. On that note, I'm going to now turn attention to the other important story that we are discussing on India Global today, which is days after Bangladesh Chief Advisor Mohammad Yunus advocated the extension of the Chinese economy around the strategically important Northeast India region. New Delhi has terminated the transshipment facility for Bangladesh export cargo, a move that will disrupt Bangladesh's trade with several countries. MEA said it's because of cost factors, but at the end of the day, this will mean that Bangladesh's exports to Nepal, to Bhutan, possibly even to Myanmar will be impacted. That's the big message coming in from India, that you mess, you will get a reply. You try and talk something about the Indian sovereignty, there will be a strong rebuttal coming in. And now that this is going to stop, China is not going to come and help Bangladesh fix this problem, is it? Which is the biggest message that India is trying to send here. Let's get in Veena Sikri, former High Commissioner of India to Bangladesh, to talk more about this. Amir Ullah Khan, who's an economist, will also join us to talk about what the impact of this is going to be, the impact of the transshipment facility being stopped on the Bangladeshi economy in terms of the extent it will hurt Bangladeshi exports, is the question I'm going to put forth to Amirullah Khan. But Veena Sikri, come in there. I want to ask from you that what is the kind of messaging do you think this sends to Dhaka after it made those very objectionable claims about Chinese extension all the way till Northeast India?
Well, yes, I think that the remarks made by Professor Mohammed Yunus while speaking to Chinese businessmen in Beijing, those were completely objectionable. I mean, he had the absolute gall to treat Northeast India as though it belonged to him, And he said that we control the access of Northeast India and we are the guardians of the oceans for them. So he's inviting the Chinese to come and use Northeast India as an extension of the Chinese economy. This was completely unacceptable. I tell you, this was a remark for which he should be really making a very deep apology for, making this kind of remark on India, which is completely uncalled for. And well, I think that the decision of the government of India on the facilities for transshipment that had been given 5 years ago to Bangladeshi exporters, which was a very valuable facility for them, a transshipment where they could use Indian ports and Indian customs posts, get their products into India, then export it from India using Indian airports and Indian facilities, which had really hastened up their exports, which made them, deliver their exports on time, which was a great importance for them because their own ports in Chittagong and Mongla and Dhaka airport, they're really overcrowded and there's a tremendous sense of delay in exporters who have to meet very tight deadlines. So certainly this decision will affect Bangladesh exports, but we've been very careful that it should not affect trade within South Asia, and we've made it clear that.
But this is the classic playbook, isn't it? Playbook response, which is that a message that was so objectionable from Dhaka, questioning India's sovereignty, has been responded in a manner that hits home the hardest without upending the diplomatic ties, which are going through a sensitive phase.
Yes, I think it is a very correct response. You're quite right. We've made the point very clear, and I think the Bangladesh exporters should really listen to this lesson and realize that there are no free rides on this. You cannot make these very nasty comments about India's northeastern states, about their involvement. And to tell you more frankly, under Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, India and Bangladesh had reached very specific agreements about access by Northeast Indian states' goods to Mongla port and to Chittagong port. And this was a very valuable decision because it meant that, from Calcutta, Mongla port is just a day's shipping. And then from there, you took the riverine route to reach Northeast states in just a couple of days, 3-4 days. And similarly, for Chittagong port, the access for the Northeast is through Tripura. And there's a bridge that has been built on the river Feni to allow access into Bangladesh through Tripura. And from there, Chittagong port is very near, just about 75 kilometers. But the Bangladesh new regime, which is not even a constitutional regime, completely illegitimate regime, has been taking its own decisions on not respecting earlier agreements, government-to-government agreements between the governments and Bangladesh. So this is something that is completely unacceptable. First of all, they're not even in any position of authority to take decisions on this because it's an interim regime and they should wait till the election results to see what the new government would want to do.
Nobody knows when those elections are going to take place, but they're holding the promise of a democratic transition soon. Veena Sikri, I have to leave it there. Thanks much for joining me. And on that note, I'm going to slip into a very short break, come back on the other side on India Global and talk more about what's the latest that's unfolding in Trump land right now, given that screening, even social media screening is happening of potential immigrants. Stay with me, I'll come back on that story. You're watching India Global. I'm Gaurie Dwivedi. As said, the other big story that we are tracking right now, well, there's some breaking news that's coming in. Let's address that and then we go back to the other big story. That is that 2611 Mastermind Tahawwur Rana has landed in India. It's a tense finale to the 16-year-long justice battle that India has been fighting, and so have been the survivors. Rana has landed in Delhi on a special flight. The mastermind brought to justice. He's dragged back to India, and it's a big win for India's fight against terrorism. 16 years on, 2611 victims are now one step closer to closure. Now, what next for Tahawwur Rana is the question that we've been asking, and hopefully we'll get answers to that in the next coming days. All right, let's now turn attention to the other important story on India Global. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services have announced that it will begin screening immigrants' social media for evidence of anti-Semitic activity as grounds for denying immigration benefit requests. Immigration, remember, is not a right. It is a privilege, of course, that has to be given. That is well known. But the fact is, if social media accounts start getting screened, what is the message that is being sent out to all those who are applying through legal routes to become lawful immigrants in the US, whether as permanent residents, whether as foreign students, or any other such opportunities legally available to immigrants around the world? The fact that social media accounts are now going to be screened for anti-Semitic activity, how does that matter? How does that impact these applicants? Is that now going too far? Are those questions now related to freedom of speech more than anything else? Well, this comes as the Trump administration has attempted to crack down on pro-Palestinian protests over Israel's devastating military assault on Gaza and Hamas's deadly attack that took place in 2023. As always, the big questions on the show. First up, free speech now grounds for denying US entry. Next question, is Trump's latest order actually a privacy breach more than anything else, because you're actually mining people's social media accounts? And is that now going to be prioritized over better academic credentials? If, let's say, you are someone applying to an Ivy League college, you have all the academic credentials, but your social media seems to be questionable. Is that grounds enough to be denied an admission into, let's say, an Ivy League college? Lastly, is freedom of speech not so free as far as Trump's America is concerned? Ray Locker with me on the broadcast. So Ray, those are tough questions. Hopefully, well, let's wait whether we get an official response to any of those or not from Trump administration. But the fact is, as I was saying, if you are a candidate who's been selected for an Ivy League college and your social media mining suddenly raises some red flags for the Trump administration, you're suddenly not good enough to be an Ivy League student?
Well, it's not only Ivy League, it's any university in the United States. I mean, every university in this country does very well by admitting international students. They pay more money to attend schools. They enrich the cultural lives of those universities and the students who attend them. So they're all at risk because of this. And it's a dramatic overreach of government authority.
No, it is an overreach of government authority, but I want to ask any numbers that you can help me with as to in terms of what is the size at which we are talking, the number of people that could be impacted here, because you said it's not just students, right? It's all possible legal immigrants who could be running into choppy waters with their application.
Oh, it's millions of people. I don't have an exact number, but you know, somebody from India applies to come to the United States to attend school, to immigrate legally, to get some kind of legal visa. And someone who knows who it is combing through that person's social media accounts to find anything that they deem, you know, anti-Semitic. And that's in the eye of the beholder. You know, there's no objective standard for what is anti-Semitic or not. I mean, you could say, I hate Jews. That certainly qualifies. But you could also say, I don't like what Israel is doing in Gaza. And some people equate that with anti-Semitism, that any criticism of Israel or its policies is somehow anti-Semitic, which I don't believe it is.
And this could be whether it is the H-1B visas, whether it's the F-1 visas, whether it's about, you know, any other such category, all legal immigrants, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And it's dangerous. I mean, it isolates the United States from the rest of the world. I mean, some people may want that to actually happen. I certainly don't. Don't think it furthers U.S. interests. The more that we withdraw from the rest of the world, the more other nations who have more expansionist designs, such as China, have a chance to fill that gap. And, you know, traditionally, the United States has been a beacon for people from around the world. They enjoy our lifestyle and our freedoms, and we should be welcoming those people, regardless of how they feel about Israel.
Robert Moran joins me as well to talk about the scale at which this could impact America as well, because a lot of American companies, American universities, they run or are heavily dependent on legal immigrants, highly skilled legal immigrants, isn't it? And if all of those are in the dock, then it raises serious questions for the US society, economy as well.
So I think that's a good point. If you look at the dynamics of universities and the economic dynamics of colleges and universities in the United States, they rely on a large number of student visas to come here and study and learn and also pay tuition. And so if you start to restrict that, or if people decide that they don't want to come here to study, that has an impact on American colleges and universities, and then a long-term downstream impact and the workplace. And I think there's a downstream long-term economic impact if something like this continues.
The other question I want to ask you is that what would be your advice to lakhs of people watching this discussion right now who would be wondering whether their application is in the dock because of one tweet they wrote, one Instagram post they may have mentioned, maybe inadvertently? What would be your message to all of them?
So I think it's, in our modern era, I think it's, despite the fact that we do have free speech, I do think it's wise to consider what you're posting. And that employers in the future could use it, that governments in other governments besides the United States, other societies that you may want to work in. So unfortunately, while I do believe in free speech, I also think it's important to understand that there are consequences, especially in the workplace, if you post things that might give a future employer pause about your employment. And so I think it's good to be safe.
What would you say, Ray, to all those people who would be looking at possibilities of coming to America, as I said, on any of those categories? What would be your message to them? Assuming, let's say, they have something in their social media accounts which may qualify as anti-Semitic.
Well, first of all, I'd recommend them taking it off their social media account to the extent that that's possible. I know that people can find those things, but why not, make it a little bit harder to find those things? And as Robert said, I mean, one of the things you got to do is think twice before you post something online. So many people don't think at all. And that's why they get in trouble. They just throw things out there.
Is this something that will stand? I understand that immigration is not a right. It's a privilege, and that's the case for any country. The US is not an exception there. But could such policies may be challenged possibly legally? Are those avenues open?
Oh yeah, I mean, look, everything's been challenged so far.
Because of the arbitrary nature, Robert, do you think because there's a certain amount of discretion involved, arbitrariness involved, do you think possibilities of legal challenges exist?
So I'm sure that there will be legal challenges. I think for your audience, there are two issues. The first issue is, to what degree does the United States or any sovereign nation have the ability to police the sort of behavior and posting of visitors to the country, right? So that's the first question. The second question really revolves around where does free speech end and sort of the implications of free speech or the business or commercial implications of free speech begin. And I think even within the United States to American citizens, that is a very murky area about the degree to which they have complete political free speech, but also in the workplace that could cause them problems. And I think that that's still very murky even for US citizens.
All right, Ray and Robert, I'll leave it there. Thanks much for joining me on a story that is disturbing to so many lakhs of immigrants looking at legal opportunities available to them in the US. But viewers, bottom line really here is that there are two important facts. One, that immigration is not a right, it's a privilege. And US is not an exception. All countries have that same attitude and they extend that privilege to whoever ticks all the boxes. Likewise, the second important fact is that when it comes to freedom of speech, it is not absolute. there are conditions there. Again, US is not an exception there. That's largely the rule anywhere in the world. But the moment such regulations come into place, where social media posts become the deciding factor, that's where discretion takes a turn for the negative, something that will have disastrous consequences, not just for the legal immigrants who are looking at opportunities in the US, but for the US economy as well, which runs on highly skilled immigrant workforce. And what started as a fight against illegal aliens is now slowly but surely turning towards highly skilled legal immigrants, a move that will be disastrous for the US society and US economy the most. On that note, a quick break. I come back with more on the other side. Stay with me.